Greetings. Welcome, sharp squares and newbies, to another edition of the Parleh Sports Betting Show with me, Jorey Middlestadt, bald guy number 2. If you're watching on video, is of course the professional Harley Redlick. We come to you each and every week on Canada's Sports Betting Network, otherwise known as the Parleh. And as always, we love to hear from our listeners, viewers, whichever way you consume this podcast. Get in touch with us. questions@theparleh.com is how you email us. And again, the Parleh is P-A-R-L-E-H, a clever play on words for Canadians who understand that. You can also reach out to either one of us on Twitter @Jorey Middle or @Sharp Edge Picks. And whenever on social media, please use the hashtag ParlehSBS. And so this is the 12th edition of the program, and a busy one as always. What's on the show this week? Well, big week here in Ontario as fully licensed sportsbook were allowed to start operating as of, midnight Monday, April 7th. And 13 books hit the ground running on opening day, which was exciting. The Parleh had an event, which we'll talk a little bit about. We won't dwell upon it. But exciting week for sports bettors, at least in the province of Ontario, and hopefully other provinces will quickly follow suit. We're awaiting news, actually, on many of them. Nothing imminent as far as we know. Harley may correct me as we move along. And that'll be our gambling story of the week, is the launch. And we're going to talk about opening accounts at different books and what we've seen in the first, 4+ days of fully legal, aside from your provincial lottery, single game wagering in Canada, specifically Ontario. If you were sleeping, the Major League Baseball season opened yesterday. For Blue Jay fans, they opened tonight at home against the Texas Rangers. We talked futures and not much win totals, but we did discuss both last week. Well, now we can talk about actual games, and the focus for today will be how to bet baseball. And Harley, being the expert that he is, he'll have plenty of thoughts on that. We're also going to revisit some basic betting concepts that we covered in the first couple of shows since our launch. And things like point spreads, money lines, over-under totals, the juice, how the books make money, those sorts of things. We want to just revisit it now that people are opening accounts and starting to bet on a more regular basis, or at least that's the theory. And, of course, the best weekend in sports, pretty much on my calendar. The Masters continues. Tiger is in the hunt, which is just beyond effing amazing. If you're a golf fan. So we'll talk about the Masters after round 1, and round 2 is already underway. So good morning to you, Harley, on this Friday morning. We should remind everybody who's listening later on that we do record this on a Friday morning. Happy Friday morning. How are you?
I'm good, Jorey. How you doing?
I'm good. It's Masters weekend. It doesn't get any better. It's very hard to get work done when it's Masters weekend, and you can watch pretty much starting at 10 a.m. until the last ball is hit. I know you could give a shit, but you're more excited about tonight for the Jays opening up?
Yeah, the Jays home opener. The Jays are 62% to win tonight. They're one of the favorites to win the World Series. What could be better than baseball coming back to Toronto?
All right, as we always do, we want to recap last week's picks. It was not a good week for either of us in terms of the bets on the podcast. But Harley,
the record was a lot better.
Harley's got a lot of change in his pocket from the men's national championship game. I got to make that distinction, right? We always got to show some love and respect for the women who had their own tournament running simultaneously.
Yeah, South Carolina was the big favorite. South Carolina crushed all the way through.
Yeah.
One of the critiques on the women's side from a lot of pundits is the fact that the favorites consistently win. And South Carolina, like I said, was a heavy favorite. They were even a favorite over UConn in the championship, and they won pretty good.
Yeah, they were the number one total, right? They were the number one seed, right? Across
they were a pick 'em to win the champ. They were the pick 'em to win a championship with 64 teams. They had to win 6 games.
Yeah, but they were the powerhouse this year in women's college basketball. So you took Villanova plus 4.5 in Final Four game number 1 on the men's side. Mm-hmm. They lost. It was kind of a blowout. Villanova made a little run in the second half and made it a little bit interesting for a little while.
It was a bad bet.
But yeah, okay. Well, you lost that one. I'll come back to Kansas in a sec. I made a bad bet too. I'm going to sit here and admit it. I thought Naomi Osaka had a chance to upset new number 1 on the women's side, Iga Świątek of Poland in the Miami Open final. First set was competitive. It wasn't after that. Świątek is on a roll of rolls right now that's led her right to the top of women's tennis. And she did away with the former number 1, Naomi Osaka, in pretty easy fashion. And so I'll take the hit on that one. Not a good bet. I wasn't laying the big juice with Świątek. I thought there was value in Osaka. I was wrong. And so, as I said a few minutes ago, Sportsbook, aside from the provincial lotteries, open for business on Monday. And 13 books were fully licensed and operational right from the get-go, which actually I think is about the number we would have expected, maybe a couple more. But any thoughts just on the number, just to start things off here, Harley?
Well, I mean, obviously the number is big. I mean, I do this seriously, and I couldn't even handle opening accounts in all 13 books this week. Part of it was a function of ridiculous questions on occupations, and taking one of the books made me take a picture. I think it was Bet Rivers, of a selfie of me holding up my driver's license.
Okay. Because I had one with the driver's license too. I did a couple signups myself.
But a driver's license, or not just a driver's license, also a selfie of me next to my driver's license was required, like 2 sets of documentation.
No, I had one of the ones. Sorry to interrupt you. I had one with had to show my license and take a selfie, but not together.
Okay,
right?
I never got that one. Okay. Yeah. And I mean, some of the signups reminded me of the gray market. Put in your name, put in an email address, put in an address, you're good to go. Now, I can't tell you who has better work on the back end than in the olden days where they could verify who you are somehow on their own or not. So I can't tell you on that front. I can tell you that some of the signups were easier than others. And I got through maybe 7 or 8 books, loaded up money on 5 or 6 of them. CIBC was not very friendly.
I saw your tweet about that. Like, what is that? Now it's legal, and the Canadian major banks won't let you use your debit or credit card. I mean, come on.
I know OLG had a problem with CIBC. Only a couple of the banks were processing out of the get-go, and I'm not sure why it is, because I used to fund Pinnacle and Bet365 when they were gray markets with CIBC. I guess CIBC is just going with the zigzag theory. Now that it's legal, they'll take a step back from gaming. I can't give you a better explanation than that.
Okay. And how did you find the bonuses? The one thing I will say, when we saw so many states open up in the U.S., a lot of the bonuses were like crazy good for the player.
The bonuses for the most part sucked.
Yeah, there was nothing really to write home about here in terms of bonuses.
The only site that I saw that ran a cool bonus, and again, I only loaded up on 5 or 6 of them, BetMGM ran a bonus where your first bet could be up to $1,000, and if you lost the bet, you got your money back. Okay. So,
wow,
anybody who wants to take a shot, I mean, I know $1,000 is a big roll for somebody, but if you put $1,000 in an account and take a shot on a dog at 3-1 or 4-1, and it wins, all of a sudden you're sitting on a nice $4,000 or $5,000 account, which is great. And if it loses, you still have $1,000 in your account. And maybe that's your book of choice. I mean, if you wanted to fund $1,000 worth of accounts, that BetMGM bonus to me was by far the best. Some of them were complicated. I mean, I know a lot of guys did the boosters. The Leafs score a goal last night. You get a bonus. I think on the first night, I bet that the Raptors would score a point against the Atlanta Hawks.
Right.
And you got a bonus, but I think those bonuses are phenomenal ideas for newbies because it teaches them how to place a bet and it shows them how to place a bet and they can register a bet or whatever it is. But $25 or $50, if I'm betting historically at Betway, am I really moving to PointsBet or FanDuel or whoever it is for $25? I mean, I don't know.
I will say this. Bet365, who's been operating on the gray market for years in this country, and I would suggest, and I don't have the numbers to back this up because it's hard to find those numbers because it was the gray market, but I anecdotally, and being a bettor for so many years, I would think they were probably the dominant player in the market in Canada in terms of the gray market.
The Toronto Star ran a story. Again, I have no clue how they got data on the gray market, but the Toronto Star ran a story a while ago on the gray market where they said that Bet365 was number 1 and Betway was number 2. Those were their numbers. Again,
I would believe
I'm not sure how they would know something like that.
So just not to focus just on one book, but Bet365 had a pretty good promo where if you deposit $10, right, you had to deposit, but only $10, you got $250 in betting credits. Right? You had to place a bet, but it could be for as little as $1. And then once that bet was settled, you would get a bonus $250, which was pretty good. And, or I should say, but on the flip side, Bet365 pissed a lot of people off who were gray market players, had to transition to the new Bet365 Canada app. And what I'm talking about specifically, because I did that and the transition was seamless. Downloaded the app, boom, and the money was in my account. I had to answer a couple questions. It literally took a minute and a half. But if you had future bets with Bet365, there was a problem. I'll let you explain.
So IGO, the Ontario governing body of sports betting, which is an offshoot of the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, made Bet365 and all the gray market guys, they allowed them to run legal on day one, which upset a lot of kosher operators since they've been running illegally for 20 years. But they made them cash out or cancel the futures bets. Now, Bet365, to their credit, did a fair thing by giving a cash out of either your initial bet or some form of cash out value, whichever was higher. But they do rip you off on the cash outs. And for example, it would suck to have the Suns preseason at good odds to win the NBA Finals just to make a couple of shekels now when you win it. Now, Bet365, to their credit, I mean, I tested out this futures thing. I bet $1 on Kansas. Again, I can only bet $2, $3 on them on a site. I just kind of play around with them to see what's going on. If you email Bet365 and you're pissed or one of your futures wins, odds are they will credit your account. From that perspective, I think they handle it the right way. They don't advertise stuff like that, but they will often do that to players who contact them. But here's my rant of the day.
So let me jump in on that just quickly and then finish your rant on that. So you're saying sometimes you just have to be very proactive. Get on the phone, get on an online chat, challenge them, and you may get more than what, if you hadn't said anything, right?
Email their customer service. It's like the posted rate for a car or a bank. Wait, if your NBA futures bet wins next month, email them and say, I had the Grizzlies to win the NBA Finals. You gave me a cash out of like $20, but like I'm due $200. And maybe they give you something. Okay. Maybe they don't. I can't guarantee you what they're going to do. I find that their direct email back and forth, you got a better shot of it than the other way. Maybe it escalates. I don't know. That's the approach. Okay. My rant, what I think again, the Ontario governing body let Bet365 do to people like me was criminally unfair. It's bad enough they let them operate on day one and keep their customers and transition them. But I got an email on day one from Bet365 stating, direct quote, "After a review of your account by our trading team, we regret to inform you that while our online service remains available to you, betting restrictions will be applied." So I'm very limited at Bet365. I can't bet more than a couple dollars. So to be clear, the limits apply to me now. They also apply to me with OLG and a lot of other places. AGCO and IGO are aware of all this and me being limited. When I approached IGO, they said, "I know you might be upset and frustrated by this, but Bet365 is allowed to do this." So Bet365 was allowed to take all the information they obtained in the gray market to get not only a leg up on the clean, kosher operators that followed the rules, but now they got superior risk management because they know who are good bettors like me and weaker bettors. And IGO seems to be on board with this new form of what I'll call irresponsible gambling, where they allow people to be limited. So basically, the smarter you are as a bettor, the less you're allowed to bet.
Do you know if that information is being shared with other books?
What? Bet365 is sharing
the
fact that I'm sharp with other books?
Right. Do you know if that's happening?
I would assume absolutely not. I don't think those guys would trade that information. I would guess it's proprietary and private. That would seem to me to be a violation of kind of all your information. You open up a site somewhere. I don't think that could be shared. But that's a great question.
But you're saying IGO is aware of this and they're not doing anything. So you're going to, right? Obviously, it's in your benefit as a professional, as a sharp bettor, and who's playing real money. And when I say real money, I don't mean like compared to funny money. I mean real amounts. So you're going to now you're going to really shop around, right? And find where they don't know you is my point, right? So that you can take them down.
My impression,
theoretically,
my impression about the way the bulk of these shops work is by the fall, I won't have accounts because they'll see bets, they'll flag right away. I mean, listen, I bet the Mariners to win the World Series this week. I max betted at FanDuel because they were 40-1 and they were 30-1 everywhere else. And I figured they were a no-name inflated team. So if I'm FanDuel, I'm running basic risk management. Somebody just opened up an account with me and they max bet an obscure team to win the World Series for big money. I mean, I'm either a diehard
Mariners fan,
Mariners Ichiro transplant from Seattle, or somebody who's picking off their 40-1 when everybody else was 30-1. And now I think they're at 32-1 on FanDuel. So they reacted to it. We'll see.
And line shopping. Right? That's something we talked about. And with lots of options, taking advantage of bonuses, which we talked a lot about last week. Line shopping is a good idea. And I'm sure you found so I was line shopping a little bit last night, and I'll talk more about it when we get to the Masters later in the show. But it's such a good idea to do it. I mean, you may not get big discrepancies, on a full slate of baseball games on a night, but in other areas. You will get big discrepancies.
The line shopping is huge. I'm going to give you two examples.
I'll give some examples later. Okay.
High level. I wrote an article on my website, Sharp Edge Picks, about the Blue Jays' chances of winning the World Series. Betway was offering 9-1, and the OLG was only offering 6-1. That's a ton. On a $100 bet, that's getting back $300 more. And I'm not picking on OLG because if you want to bet the Dodgers to win the World Series, OLG was offering 6-1, which is a high price for the favorite, and Betway was only offering 5-1, especially with futures line shop. Bookmakers have different lines. Maybe it's geography. OLG is biased towards the Jays, Betway towards the Dodgers. Some places, maybe it's risk management. Maybe some whale put in a monster bet on the Dodgers or Tiger Woods or whoever. So then they got to readjust the whole thing. I read Oscar De La Hoya bet a fortune on Tiger. So right after that, they redo the odds and maybe you find some value. But 3 shops is better than 1. 10 shops is better than 3. You can go from losing to break even simply by line shopping, especially with regular bets. The Kansas City Royals yesterday were plus 100 at most books. I saw them at plus 110 at another book. That's 5% return.
Yeah.
That's huge. They won the game. The difference between getting back 110 and 100 on your bet If you do that on every bet you make, you literally go from losing to break even just by effective line shopping on your regular bets. The futures is harder because the VIG is so big.
Right. And I sort of glossed over it earlier, but I do want to give you credit. And because you talked a little bit about it on the show. We talked a little bit about the great event that the Parleh ran down at the Rec Room in downtown Toronto, sort of like an industry launch where there was people from different books and different media outlets. And it was a really great event. We did a little, 10, 15 minute live stream like version of the show, just a short version to be part of the program. So kudos to the Parleh and everybody who came. It was a really fun event. What I'm referring to is Monday night's men's national championship game. You bet Kansas prior to the tournament at 9 or 9.5 to 1. You had talked about the fact that they were in a weak bracket and they were arguably one of the 2 or 3 best teams. You cashed the ticket. Well done.
Thanks. The point I want to emphasize on that is I didn't lay off the bet in the finals.
Yeah, I asked you if you were going to hedge the bet, and you said absolutely not on Monday night.
I like Kansas. A lot of people, when they stand to win $6,000 and they got the favorite, easily put $2,500 on the dog to bank the $3,500. I don't like getting double juiced to death, especially. I like Kansas. I like the side. I mean, obviously, a lot of credit to North Carolina. They put up a great game.
Yeah, it was a very good game. Yep.
The fact that game turned on a loose floorboard turnover is obscene and embarrassing for the NCAA. I mean, they're greedy. They like it in these ridiculous football stadiums so they could get 70, 80,000 people worth of revenue. But I mean, come on. That poor kid in the championship turned on a loose floorboard because they're putting in a basketball court on a football arena.
Yeah,
they
got to squeeze every dollar they can, as you certainly know well from over the years with the NCAA, which is a whole other can of worms that I don't want to open at this very moment because we have lots to talk about. You wanted to add one thing before we get to some betting concepts now that a lot more people, and especially the newbies, are going to start betting or have already started. Go ahead. What was your last thing there? Oh, sorry.
We talked about signups, and I had issues with Bet Rivers. They're the ones with the license and the selfie. I complained about it on Twitter. I got a reply from Bet Rivers. Direct message us your name and email, and we will fix this. And they fixed it. By contrast, if you criticize a Canadian company, OLG will usually at least reply and say, that's unfortunate. Please call our 1-800 number to address it. Which is not as good as the direct message and getting it done, but it's something. And CIBC, when I complained about the funding, crickets, nothing. And then a bunch of hours later, they called me and said, we think there was a fraud on your account because I did an e-transfer for an account. So, I mean, and even when they called me about a fraud, they called and said, we think there's a fraud on your account. Please call 1-800 to fix it. Like,
come on.
It's CIBC is pathetic. Their customer service was pathetic. They, again, Schedule A banks in Canada are run like utilities government or even worse. It's compared to the customer service at Bet Rivers or BetMGM, direct messaging you on Twitter. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody on CIBC that knows something called Twitter exists, but when you get addressed by CIBC on Twitter, you should go to the consumer, figure out the issue. And definitely don't call me about a fraud and don't even speak to me. Just tell me to call you back. I mean, horrible, sad, big banks in Canada. That's my rant on that. Let's move on to betting concepts.
Yes. So we've covered some of this in earlier programs, but we're not going to ask you to go back and listen to them at the moment. And for already experienced bettors and especially sharp bettors, if you want to go get a coffee or something for a few minutes, go ahead. But especially for those who are new to the game, the betting game, just basic concepts, which include point spread, money line, and over-under totals. Those are the 3 most basic forms of wagering. So quickly, explanation on a point spread and the juice that goes along with it, which is important for people to understand.
So the point spread is designed as a 50-50 proposition. So, for example, the Raptors are hosting the Rockets tonight. The Raptors are amazing. even though I think they're inflated tonight and they're probably going to
Yeah.
rest guys.
We're going to talk about that.
The point is, the Raptors are great. The Rockets suck. But to bet that for fun, the easiest way as a 50-50 proposition is to do it with what's called a point spread. The Raptors are a huge favorite. They're a 14.5-point favorite tonight, meaning if you bet the Raptors at 50-50, they got to win by 15 or more. If it's a relatively close game or the Rockets lose by 13, 6, or win the game, you bet on the Rockets win. It's designed as a 50-50 concept. The way Vegas or your online sports books make money is by what's called juice or vig. So you basically got to risk an extra 10%. So you lay 110 to win 100, and it works across all the points. You can risk $27.50 to make $25. It's just an extra 10%. Remember, you're winning about half your bets. You're losing about half your bets. So that 10% quote unquote juice really turns into 5% juice. So that's the overall margin that sportsbooks aim to make. Sharp sportsbooks catering to sharp bettors might make 3 or 4% juice. And the ones that cater to parlays or futures, etc., might make 7 or 8%. But 5% is their ballpark profit margin. If you were flipping coins, that's what you lose on a bet in expected value. Again, half of that. So to be a winning player and overcome juice, you need to win 52.4% of your bets.
52.4. That's the number. Remember that, people. To break even, right? You have to win 52.4% of your bets, right?
Assuming they're 50-50 point spreads and assuming you're paying standard vig. Yes, correct.
Right. What we would call a 20-cent line, right? If you hear somebody say a 20-cent line, that means 10 cents on either side, as Harley just explained. Minus 110. So risk 110 to win 100. That's called a 20-cent line, 10 cents on either side of the mean. We're using 100, right, as a simple number for the mean. Okay.
And that's standard. It's important to understand that's standard juice. When we talk about baseball sometimes has less juice on games as an incentive to bet it in the summer. In-game betting, very popular with a lot of people. There will be more juice. They will use usually at least a 30-cent line, and God help you if it's a 40-cent line. That means minus 115 on each side. One of the reasons they do it in-game is because it's harder for them to set a line, and they want to give themselves more of a buffer. The other reason they do it is they just figure they can make a little bit more money that way, or maybe operating it is a little bit more expensive. So you really got to be that much more confident because there you got to be about 54% in your in-game. Be extra aware when you're betting futures teams to win the World Series. Some places take 50-60% vig. And be very careful if you're betting what's called a three-way line. So, for example, in a sport like soccer or the way they bet hockey in Europe, where they'll bet the NHL where it's either side to win or any game that goes into overtime is deemed a tie. If you're going to bet any event on a three-way line, just be aware of the fact that there's going to be extra juice because it's much harder to calculate it in a three-way line than a two-way line. And if they can get away with charging you more juice, they're happy to do that.
Now, some sports don't really have a point spread. They don't lend themselves to it. Baseball is one of those. Hockey is another. Although they do offer some point spread options in those sports now. But the dominant form of betting certain sports is what you call a money line bet. So explain that one. Explain that one for the people.
Baseball's a great example. There's no overtime, extra innings. It doesn't matter. You're simply betting who's going to win the game. So let's take an example where the Blue Jays are much better than the Texas Rangers. Forget about tonight. Tonight, the Jays are about 62%. Because Texas has got Gray going, who's pretty good, and maybe the gap between him and Berrios isn't that big. We'll get into baseball later and why starting pitchers are so important.
Oh, yeah.
A couple days from now, the Jays are still going to have aces going, and Texas is going to have some AAA bum going in his third game or his fourth game. And then the Blue Jays will be closer to what's called a 2-1 favorite. And that would mean that they expect the Blue Jays to win 2/3 of the time and the Rangers to win 1/3 of the time. So in a no juice world, you would risk 200 on the Blue Jays to win 100, and you'd risk 100 on the Rangers to win 200. But we live in a juice world. And usually juice at that level is what we call plus 180 minus 220. So on the Blue Jays, instead of risking 200 to win 100, you'd have to risk $220 to win 100. And instead of paying you 200 on your Texas bet for 100, we would only pay you 180. And that's we, meaning the sports books, and we make the spread. We make the difference.
Right. And so that's a money line bet. And then the other one that, again, has been an old school kind of, I mean, they didn't even have prop bets, 20 years ago, or probably 20 years ago. Yeah. Except on the Super Bowl. Like that was the only time you could bet a prop bet, which we've talked about, and we'll get to that as we move along too. But the other sort of basic form of better is what's called the total, right? Which is over or under the total points in a game, an event. So quickly talk about totals.
Totals are very similar to point spread bets, but you're just betting on how many total runs or
goals
or anything that will be scored in the game. So in baseball, for example, an over-under might be 9, meaning total runs scored is 9 runs. Extra innings count. A little known fact, usually if a game is called after 7 innings because of rain, the bet cancels out. Even if you bet the over and there's already 11 runs scored, they don't count it.
So read the rules and regulations when you're betting totals of a sport.
Standard in most books. Usually, for example, if the over-under is 9 in a game, if the final score is 6-3, you add up the total, everybody gets their money back. It's deemed a push. If the final score is 4-1 and you bet under, you win. Over, you lose. Totals are just 50-50 propositions, but instead of cheering for a team, you're cheering for either a lot of offense or a lot of defense.
And we should also add that in general, there is usually more value. You okay there, Harley?
Yeah, trying to get my laptop navigated with the mic and everything. I'm good.
So as I was saying, traditionally and generally over the course of time, there tends to be a little more value betting unders. Explain.
There's more value betting unders than overs. There's more value, generally speaking, betting underdogs and favorites because casual bettors like betting offense and cheering for points, cheering for baskets, cheering for scores. Nobody's cheering in football for a run into the line of scrimmage of 3 yards in 30 seconds to be clicked off the clock.
Unless you bet the under.
Unless you bet the under, so there's value the other way.
Yeah.
It's kind of zagging when everybody's zigging. Same thing applies to betting underdogs. People ignore the value and they just focus. What difference does it make how much I lay? If the Jays are going to win tonight, the Jays are going to win tonight. But when the Jays are only going to win 59% of the time tonight, and the odds are implying that they got to win 63% of the time tonight, that just doesn't cut it, because in the long run, it's not a question of is the team going to win or lose, but how often are they going to win or lose relative to the price you're getting.
All right. And let's get to baseball. Season opened yesterday on several fronts. A lot more teams in action today, including the Toronto Blue Jays, where the hype train is chugging at max speed right now. Second choice, to win the World Series most places. Favorite to win arguably the best division in baseball, the American League East. And so there's a lot of a lot of excitement in this country over the Blue Jays, and justifiably so.
I don't want to put a damper on anybody's ticker tape parade yet. I'm a big Blue Jays fan. I'm going to the game Sunday with my family. I've stocked up on tickets. I was a diehard. I was going for the 20 years that the Blue Jays sucked and were irrelevant. I got married in 2007 and praised my wife for learning to love the Blue Jays and coming with me to games, because at that point in time, they hadn't sniffed the playoffs in more than a decade, and I was still going. And then the dome was hollow and sad. And is it exciting? Yes. But the last time we had this much excitement over a season is when we got Dickey and Johnson and all those guys, and we flamed out. So do we have a lot of reason to be excited? 100%. We look like we have a stacked starting rotation. Our kids are almost no longer kids anymore, like Bechetting and Vladdy and stuff, look like they're entering the prime of their career. But never forget, a year ago, we looked at Vladdy as coming off of a chubby season, and there were guys that thought maybe Kevin Biggio had more potential than him. So, I mean, a lot can change in a year of the life of a young person, and a lot can change with an injury and an adjustment. I think Montoya is a good person. I don't think he's a great in-game manager, and that's going to cost the Blue Jays a couple games this year. And if you're not sharp on that side, it's frustrating. They're playing in a super, super competitive division. Last year, we didn't think much of the Red Sox, and they were pretty good. The Yankees still are competitive. The Rays, God bless them, nobody would trade rosters with the Rays ever, but the Rays just find a way to win. I mean, if we had the Rays roster, we wouldn't be excited right now. And so kudos to them and management. And I mean, I can confidently predict we'll finish ahead of the Baltimore Orioles in the standings. Other than that, I hope and cheer as a fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the same boat. And I said last week, like, there's no value in betting the Jays on the futures. Maybe the win total, although the juice was too high, so I took a pass. Because whenever the hype is that great, you got to be very wary of that. Baseball, as you just pointed out, so many things can happen. It's such a long season. But we're both Blue Jay fans. We'll be rooting for them. But for the purposes of this discussion, betting on baseball. And before I get your general and or specific thoughts on how to bet this sport, I remember it may not, I don't think it applies the same way now, but you may correct me. Back in the day when I used to do a show, national, well, part regional, part national sports betting show on radio, we used to have a regular guest by the name of Dave Malinsky. We called him our Vegas insider, and may he rest in peace. Dave passed away tragically a number of years ago.
Yeah, it sucks. And Malinsky was
a legend.
I like listening to you, listening to Malinsky. Malinsky's, any sharp bettor will probably have at least 2 or 3 guys in the back of his mind that he gives credit to, either for opening his eyes into why there are sharps or how it exists, or thought, whoa, I never thought about that. And I thought about a lot. Malinsky was definitely one of them.
So within the sports betting circles, and remember, prior to even online, right? We're talking, 20 years ago, it was Vegas, and he was based there, and he was a professional bettor. And we would have him on regularly on the show, especially during the NFL season, but we'd also always talk to him before the baseball season. And I always remember him saying that of the 4 major professional sports, and the landscape has changed so dramatically, but of the 4 major professional sports, baseball was the best sport to bet. And some of the basic reasoning behind it, simple. So many games being the most important factor, that it's hard for the bookmakers to come up with the sharpest possible lines with so many games and games every single day. Do you still subscribe to that theory that of the 4 major professional sports, and you can lump in other sports if you'd like, that baseball is the best sport to bet in terms of having an edge as a bettor?
I agree with that. I wrote an article on my website, Sharp Edge Picks, years ago on why I love betting baseball, and it's still true. We talked a little bit about the fact that to attract bettors in the quieter summer months, a lot of books are offering half vig. They used to, in Vegas, spread 105 on each side. I went online. I haven't seen any 105s. Bet Rivers and FanDuel seem the best at around minus 107. But again, remember, minus 107 versus minus 110 is 2/3 vig. All of a sudden, you got to do 52% to make profit versus 52.4 to break even. And that's a big difference over the long run. Like you mentioned, 15 games a night, and there's games every night. So the bookmakers have to come up with lines. A lot of them come up with lines before the last game even finishes, and then they go to bed for the night, or the lines are kind of hanging there for the next day. So you can make some adjustments, figure out what's going on, day games following night games. Maybe the catchers aren't playing. if a bullpen is really overused or you really use your two best guys for the second night in a row, maybe they take a rest and then your bullpen's stuck with your third or fourth guy in a clutch situation. I think if anything, baseball got better to bet now than 10 or especially 20 years ago. Starting pitchers used to go 7-8 innings.
Wow.
Now they go 4-5 innings, especially in April. And then once you get into the bullpens, I mean, God help you, it's a crapshoot of guys who could never make it or run of the mill, passing the baton, twirling it. I mean, every year in baseball, there's going to be one or two teams that super overperform because their bullpen came together, which is translation for they all got lucky good on the same year, and you can't replicate it unless you're the Rays.
So along those lines, right, because in the past, right, in the modern game, and when I say modern game, I'm like talking really what the last decade, right, where the value of starting pitching in terms of how many innings they throw has changed dramatically, right? Mm-hmm. In the past, you're betting starting pitchers. That's right. Really how you're making your baseball bet. Now that has changed, but so you're arguing that that makes it even better to bet baseball, or right or not?
I'm arguing it makes it even better. To me, I like betting underdogs. I like volatility. Randomness is my friend. So what I love about baseball is the fact that it's the sixth inning and there's 2 on and there's 2 out. And it's a critical at bat in a relatively close game. And a guy hits it off the end of the bat and maybe it bloops in fair. Or you hit a line drive. And how many times is it an inch foul? And you're like, Jesus, if that ball's fair, that's 2 runs. On most baseball games, it takes 4 runs to win a baseball game. 2 runs could be scored or not scored because of one bloop in the 6th inning. Randomness is your friend. It's hard to do. You'll hear about my value bets soon for tonight. Give the season a few more days where it's not necessarily the aces, etc. And generally speaking, if you can start getting decent teams at plus 140, plus 160, or unless they're playing the Dodgers or unless they're playing super aces, I mean, your second starter who's going 5 innings and then it's into the bullpen versus my more mediocre third starter, it's marginal, and the dogs are great value.
Now, what about the totals? There was an old adage, and I don't know if it still applies. I'll let you answer in a sec. But the old adage that at the beginning of the baseball season, especially when teams are playing in cold weather, right? In many markets, that pitching is always ahead of hitting early in the season. And so the books know this, but there's still, there can be value in betting under totals early in the season. Do you buy that, or the books are too sharp? Right? No,
I don't buy it. I also don't buy it because I think it gets more than negated by the fact that
the starting pitchers don't go.
Starters only go 4 innings now in April. I mean, it's cold, it's rainy, and you don't want to blow out the guy's arm. And especially this year where spring training was even shorter and they had a weird strike and
lockout.
When you pay a pitcher $300 million of guaranteed money, you can't overuse him.
Yeah.
So if you're going to your bullpen faster, it doesn't work. I don't buy that. I mean, I'm an under better in baseball games in general. I don't get too excited now. I get more excited later in the year.
If you're going to bet baseball on a regular basis, last question sort of on this subject, and then we'll have to see if you have any plays for tonight. Do you ever look at first of all, at the 5-inning bet, right? Where that is an option where the game can be decided, right? You can bet just the 5-inning outcome. Do you ever
not
look
my
at
favorite
things?
Bet, but if you feel that one starting pitcher is undervalued or overvalued relative to the other one, then the 5-inning bet is the best bet you can make, because that's how you could capitalize on that. So, for example, if I think Gray tonight for the Rangers is the real deal ace, and I think Berrios is a little inflated, I'm better off betting the Rangers in the 5-inning line than in the game line, because the 5-inning line is really Gray versus Berrios.
Right.
Inning 6, 7, 8, and 9 is the Blue Jays hitting in bullpen versus the Rangers hitting in bullpen. manager decisions, etc. If I don't like a manager, maybe the 5-inning bet is better. If I don't trust Montoya and late game strategy, there's very little strategy. The managers literally could show up in baseball in the 6th inning. So,
yeah, very true. And as you were saying, there are opportunities to do your homework in baseball. And what I mean by that, like you alluded to the fact that, there may be a big drop off from the starting catcher to the backup catcher, right? So day game after a night game, the starting catcher is likely not going to play. And that may be true in other key position players, right? Where load management as it's been a thing in baseball over the years. And now with the universal DH, right? You may see guys day game after a night game, may only DH or be available as a pinch hitter. But if you pay attention to things like that, or wear and tear on a bullpen, right? Over the course of, it's a 4-game series, and over the first 3 games, one team is just, their bullpen is just gassed, right? So, but you have to spend time and do your homework to find those spots, correct?
Correct. But the good part is you don't have to bet.
Right.
The books have to set a line on 15 baseball games a night, and they got to do it quickly. You have all night and the next day to evaluate and see what you think is a soft line, or even better, make all 15 lines yourself if you want to do it properly, and see where there's value. And if the books are doing good and there is no value anywhere, just don't bet. Again, with the line shopping now, chances are when you have access to 7 or 8 books, if one shop is even a few cents off, there you should find a bet or two you like a day, but you can just pass.
100%. I don't bet much baseball at all. I may pick a spot here or there if I see something or read something, but yeah, pick your spots, bet on the team you like, throw a little bit on just to have a rooting interest and some fun. It's what we will always talk about. Gamble responsibly, play within your limits. And that is something that we should probably say each and every time we talk to people, especially for new sports bettors. Anything on tonight's Major League Baseball slate?
Yeah, I got 2 value bets that I like today. I like the Tigers plus 123 at Bet Rivers and the Angels minus 106 at FanDuel. Again, those
who are the Tigers playing? You said Tigers plus 123?
The Tigers are playing the White Sox.
Okay. I'm just writing that down. Yeah. And the Angels, you said?
Yeah, are playing the Astros.
What's the Angels line?
Minus 106 at FanDuel.
Okay.
Again, I want everybody to get into the habit of line shopping. I looked at a few of the books, and you get a couple cents here or there. My guess is as it gets closer to game time with betting action, you'll see a bigger disparity in the books. The opening lines are usually pretty similar. I bet a tad more on the Angels just because they're minus 106, not plus 123. So the Tigers are at home to the higher-rated White Sox. The White Sox are a big favorite to win the division, but the Tigers look pretty solid this year. The White Sox ace, Giolito, he's just not going to last that long on the cold in the opener. I like the Angels to bounce back after yesterday's loss at home. I like home teams in baseball. It means something. They bat last. There's a strategic advantage. I know the books build in a little bit as they should. I think they could build in a little bit more. There is some strategy around late game play, bullpen management, etc. Again, the Tigers plus 123 for 1 unit. The Angels minus 106 for 1.1 units. Split in profit. And as the baseball season goes on, you'll see me betting bigger and bigger dogs.
Who are the Angels against again? Sorry, I don't have the schedule in front of me.
The Astros.
Sorry.
They're home to the Astros.
Home to the Astros.
They played last night.
Yep. So 2 picks for Harley. Tigers plus 123 over the White Sox. Angels minus 106 to take down the Astros. We'll continue, especially once we get through hockey and basketball playoffs and stuff. We'll have lots more time to talk about baseball for sure, because there won't be nearly as many betting options, as it'll be the only one of the 4 major pro sports in North America to be operating at that time. All right. Time to talk about one of my favorite subjects, the Masters. And again, my favorite sports weekend of the year. I get so little work done Thursday, Friday, a Masters week. Love watching during the day, especially all the viewing options where you can watch featured groups and Amen Corner, which you have. You don't even know what Amen Corner is, but there's different ways to watch the Masters, at least early in the day until the network coverage takes over. And so the big story yesterday, obviously, Tiger Woods. Just a quick thought on Tiger. He was 1 under. He's in the top 10. He's only 4 behind the lead. Personally, and I said this last week when we talked about it, when it was a possibility that Tiger would play, I don't see him winning the tournament. And nothing from yesterday changes my mind in that regard. He shot 1 under. He only hit 9 out of 18 greens. Now, if he can improve on that and improve a lot, then he does have a chance. But based on the lack of competitive play, I think that's a lot to ask. And you cannot win this golf tournament on this golf course if you're missing half the greens. I don't care how good your short game is. At some point, it will catch up with you because it's just too hard to get up and down, that many times. You only had a couple of birdies. Is driving, which you can get away with some wayward drives at Augusta, was okay. He had a few pretty squirrely ones. I just think physically he's going to run out of gas for a variety of reasons. You can see he doesn't walk exactly the same way given the injury. So while a lot of people are rooting for Tiger, and I'm not rooting against him, and I think it's unbelievable that he's even playing given what he's gone through in the last year. There may be a little bit of value, but I don't see that he can actually maintain this and win the golf tournament. But it looks like he'll probably make the cut, and so it'll be good to see him on the weekend. So last week, you know nothing about golf, but you threw in Joaquin Niemann and Shane Lowry as your picks, both in the sort of the 50 to 60 to 1 range. Niemann's only 2 behind and had a good day, so he's in the mix. Lowry was just okay. I think he finished +1, but he's in the mix he's in the mix. I mean, a lot will certainly change after today's round. So for myself, I said I wasn't betting Rory McIlroy, but I was rooting for him, and he had another typical up and down general, ended up 1 over. I think this course, he's just in his head, and this course is really tailor-made for him. So he's got to find a way to unlock whatever is locking up his brain at Augusta. I took Xander Schauffele at 20 to 1. It's sort of my medium odds pick. He did not have a great day either. My Canadian content boy, though, Corey Connors, Corey Connors at 60 to 1. Good first day, 2 under par, 3 back, right in the mix, and looks like he's on his game, and I think he's going to be a factor all weekend long, so I'm liking that one. My long shot pick, Francesco Molinari, unless he has a real nice day today, probably won't make the cut. Using one of my favorite phrases, he shit the bed and probably will miss the cut. So futures are down at most places right now. I mean, you can bet it in game, but the odds are going to be fluctuating because there's, I don't know, probably about 6 groups already on the course this morning. But we were talking earlier about line shopping. So I took a look last night and a little bit this morning at some players who are either, who are in the mix, their odds to win the tournament after round 1. Here's what I found, Harley. Corey Connors. The range at 3 different books, the low was 20 to 1. The high was 28 to 1. That's a pretty big discrepancy, right?
You're going to find that, especially with stuff moving and guys betting into it.
So, but other guys, that was the biggest discrepancy I found, with the exception of at longer odds, Tyrrell Hatton, who I think is worth a look at right now after round 1. The way he played yesterday wasn't a great day, but the underlying numbers were pretty good. So the range in 3 books, 55 to 1 to 70 to 1.
Wow.
Right? So they're another great example of line shopping. Two other guys I think are worth a look right now after day one. Victor Hovland, his range, two of the books were at 25-1. One was at 28-1. So not a big range there. And your man, Joaquin Niemann. The range there was very, very, very slight. And that makes more sense, right? Because he's one of the favorites now.
Yeah,
being
as you go up the leaderboard, they're tighter.
Right. So he was at 16-1 at two books and 17-1 at the other. But it just shows you how line shopping does matter. And Sung Jae Im, the first round leader, who I have in a draft, yay, as one of my players in the draft, he was 9-1, 9-1, 9.5-1. And I think he was the fourth choice, even though he was the leader after round one, but he doesn't have the name cachet and the world ranking of some of the other guys. So if you're looking to bet the Masters the rest of the way, all I will say is this: looking to head to the weekend, and if you're like you said you may tune in the 17th hole on Sunday. Hopefully you're going to tune in earlier and maybe even watch a lot of it. Yeah. Yes, you are.
Zero.
You don't know what you're missing.
You know what? I'm going to the J game.
Oh, you're going to the J game. Okay, so is it a 1 o'clock? Is it a 1 o'clock game?
It's a 1:30 game.
Okay, so you'll be able to
try. Nope. Then I got to try out with my wife. We're trying to compete in doubles. I think it's going to be
tennis doubles.
An embarrassment for me. Mixed doubles for our tennis club or something like that. I don't think it's going to work out that well.
So you're not even going to watch the end of the Masters.
Not if my
boy if my boy out of here already
is fighting for it, maybe I'll refresh my app.
Okay. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is if you're going to tune in to the last round, you're a casual guy and you may want to place a little bet. Just know this: if for the last round, okay, for Sunday, don't go deep down the leaderboard for a guy who's like 6 or 7 back. It is so rare that happens. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know at least in the last like 10 or even 15 years, the winner has come from like the last 2 groups, right? So if you're going to bet,
I get it. On Sunday, you can't make up 6 strokes on 7 guys. It's not as simple like you just run the math. Like you got to shoot the lights out at -8, and even then, anybody par beats you. It doesn't work. I get it.
Right, and it's very hard to go that kind of low on this course. It just doesn't happen, and especially the way the forecast is trending, right? Because when that course gets firmer and the greens and faster, and the greens get firmer, it's very hard to go very low. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to bet Sunday, you got to pick somebody from the last 2 groups. Well, they're twosomes, maybe the last 3, but they got to be within kind of 3-4 shots, or they really have virtually no chance. Hey, if you want to take a long shot, be my guest, but don't really go much beyond the last 2 or 3 groups, or you're kind of throwing your money away. So still rooting for Rory. And rooting hard for Corey Connors. Love to see him be the second Canadian to put on that green jacket. And if you line shop at 28-1, only 3 back after round 1, if you can still find it today, please do so. All right, before we leave, you wanted to talk just briefly about the Raptor game tonight. We mentioned it earlier. They're hosting the Rockets, second night of a back-to-back. Big win over the Sixers last night, which gives them a leg up to the 5 seed in a potential first-round matchup against the Sixers. And, oh, by the way, tease, we will be previewing the NBA playoffs next week, right?
We will be talking NBA playoffs next week. The Raptors right now are 80-1 at BetMGM. Most sites have them at 50 or 65-1 in that range. So again, 80-1 at BetMGM versus 50 or 60-1 somewhere else. You got a line shop. 80-1 would mean they're 1-3 to win each of their 4 series. The pricing is about right. It's tough winning as a dog. The Raps are a massive 14.5-point favorite tonight. They're playing the stinky Rockets. It's a crazy line with the rest that we talked about, but
Are they going to? Aren't they going to? I mean, I haven't done the research on it yet.
I'm assuming they're going to rest guys and load management.
Well, Van Vliet sat last night.
Having said that, be careful, because the backups on good teams play tonight's game against the Rockets like it's the NBA championship, because they want to be part of the winning team. And the Rockets have been tanking it for so long, they don't care. So you got to be careful. The line's the line. The Raptors are likely locked into fifth. Like you said, they're going to play either the Sixers or the Celtics in the playoffs. From what I understand, Jason Tatum and possibly Jaylen Brown are not vaccinated, in which case playing the Celtics would be kind of cool.
Yeah, baby.
After the Raptors spent a year or two on the road, getting to host 3 playoff games where their unvaxxed guys aren't allowed to play, I mean, that sounds like a great opportunity. So
yes.
Hopefully, I in a way, I was upset that the Raptors won yesterday. It could have helped, maybe. I don't know. We'll see how the standings play out.
Yeah, no, there's still some volatility. Maybe the Celtics, maybe the Sixers. It could even be, I think, the Bucks.
It's possible. It depends
right? They're all within a couple of games.
Yeah, it depends how things
there's a couple of games left.
Break late. Yep.
So do you have a thought tonight? Like, is there value in the Rockets because you think the Raps might take their foot off the gas?
Even taking their foot off the gas, they're vastly superior. I mean, on a lark, if you wanted to take the Rocks, go for it. I mean, I'm not betting that game.
Okay. Because you had mentioned you wanted to touch upon it, so I thought maybe you had a play.
No, I wanted to touch upon it because the dynamic is interesting. It's to understand betting lines. And even though the Raptors are quote unquote not playing for very much, their superior talent is reflected in the line, and the Rockets stink.
Yes, they do. All right. That's going to do it for this week. Next week, as I just mentioned, we are going to preview the NBA playoffs and how to tackle betting the NBA postseason. Harley has thoughts on betting everything, so we'll look forward to that. I think we're going to talk a little bit about another betting concept that we haven't covered yet next week. That is trends, and not industry trends, but betting trends. And if you read game stories like going in handicapping, you will always see trends. And so we're going to talk about how valuable or invaluable those may be. We'll do that next week. You're free to give us thoughts on what you'd like to hear us talk about next week. And we'll continue to monitor the Ontario market, right? And the new books and what's happening with signups and bonuses and things like that, and stories that will come out during the course of the next week. But you can tell us what you want to hear on the program. Email us questions@theparleh.com. Reach out to either one of us on Twitter @JoreyMiddle or @SharpEdgePicks for either one of us. And again, whenever you're on social media, please use the hashtag ParlehSBS. That is our social media little tag. Always rate, review, subscribe. Please do all those things as well. And go Jays as they open the season tonight. Really excited for this Blue Jay season, no question about it. And so, for Harley, I'm Jorey. May all your picks be winners. Ours too. We'll talk to you next Good Friday for another edition of the Parleh Sports Betting Show with me, Jorey, and him, Harley, on Canada's Sports Betting Network, The Parleh. Enjoy the Masters in particular. Enjoy
watching TV this
opening weekend. Yes, enjoy it all. Thanks, Harley. Talk to you next week.